Hello and welcome to another Sogeti Labs webcast. My name is Darren Baker and I manage the Sogeti Intel partnership. Today we have a guest speaker from Intel, Damien Callaghan. Damien works for Intel in the Internet of Things group and has been working with Sogeti, Capgemini, and Sogeti High-Tech on several offerings. We've asked Damien to speak with us today on Intel's IoT strategy and provide us with some use cases on the technology. Damien?
Hello everybody, my name is Damien Callahan. I work for Intel in the Internet of Things group within the organization, and the role I play is to work with our sales and marketing organization to enable global solution integrators to bring to market IoT-based solutions that create a market for Intel's product. So it's not a direct sell. It's more of a market enablement from our perspective. From your perspective, it's the technology, technical roadmaps and ecosystems that we bring that are of interest. We work a lot with Sogeti High-Tech in Toulouse, with Philippe Ravi, who is on the call. And in the presentation you're about to see, half of it is Intel and Intel logos, and then whenever we get halfway, it's going to switch to Sogeti High-Tech side. So that's the agenda that I have. Show about Intel's approach, talk a little bit about the key tenets of IoT, because the assumption I'm making, so there's the legal notice and disclaimers, it's just about logo protection and what have you, is that this is a very switched on audience that is familiar, and fundamentally the objective that I'm trying to do here is to enable you to talk about an IoT solution that you can bring to market, to your clients, to your customers, and where to get help. So that's essentially it. That I discussed, end-to-end IoT solutions. Talk a little bit about compute at the edge, which is one of the elements that Intel brings to the story. That's a differentiation, and some of the elements of differentiation that brings to Sogeti High-Tech and Sogeti in particular. As I mentioned, review the solution and platform that Philippe and his team have built, and that is being brought to market as we speak and is deployed and up and running, and then talk about some use cases and handle some questions after that. So Grove, founder of Intel, passed away this year. His major thing was talking about inflection points, and fundamentally it's the belief in Intel that Internet of Things is yet another inflection point for the technology and technology-related industries. Previous ones, of course, were the Internet, the mobile revolution, and now cloud, and now we have Internet of Things. And in such a situation, creates huge opportunity. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but there's three technology-related drivers that have made it feasible for very wide deployment of the Internet of Things. One is the cost of sensors has dropped dramatically. So at the edge, there's a huge number of variability of various types of sensors at the edge that you can see there. This is the famous 50 billion devices. Huge variety of things, but the cost of those is dropping dramatically. The cost of bandwidth has also dropped dramatically over the years, which enables this to happen a lot cheaper, but there's still an issue with it, which we'll come to it. And then the cost of processing, which has enabled the cloud in particular, has also dropped dramatically. But fundamentally, these three elements have created an environment which allows us to put together solutions that work from that perspective. So this is an end-to-end IoT. So the focus here is on the end-to-end. It's not any one element of it. And the way to look at this is at the far left, you see the things, or the buildings, the vehicles, the energy elements, the factories. So at that edge, it's connect the device and things. We believe that you need intelligence at the edge, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. You then move into the analytics side, where you bring the data from the edge into the cloud, into the data center, to run the analytics on it, and that requires all the expertise there. And then finally, in the far right, apply the data analytic tools to give the insight, which allows, from the customer's perspective, the client's perspective, for the data to be monetized, for action to be taken. You will note that there's end-to-end security right throughout the chain, and I will talk a lot about security, and it's one of the huge differentiators that Sogeti High-Tech have, that Philippe has helped create with Intel's help, from a story and a customer point of view. One thing that experience from talking to customers about this is that security is a table stake. Security is the one thing that a board will ask about, even if they don't understand anything else. Is it secure? Is the data secure? Too many businesses have been badly hurt. Too many organizations have been exposed and embarrassed by data leakage. So security of the data is a fundamental requirement of every solution. The advantage that we have here is that we can lead with that in a positive way and lead with it proactively so that you put it on the table and address it up front rather than it become an issue for you. So this is the end-to-end IoT, and the variations of this, including architectural type schematics, will be shown later. But fundamentally what you're looking at is an edge, the gateway, security end-to-end, data into insight in the cloud, then run analytics and monetize the data at the edge. So I'm going to take a little bit of time on this one, and the best way to read this one is from the bottom up, from world-class security, which I just mentioned. The solutions that we have here have the very many layers of security that are required for clients these days, that there's no single approach to it. The Sogeti high-tech solution enabled by Intel has a number of things that are unique. First of all is its hardware, its embedded security elements based upon Intel chip technology from that perspective. And that enables labeling, because communication is not just one way from the edge into the cloud. Frequently it's also from the cloud out to the edge. And how do you manage that? And who has access to it, who has the rights to it, and so on. So security level for the data is managed throughout, and as I say, this is fundamental to the story. The second element is that it's interoperable, and pretty much all the customers are asking for availability of devices and things at the edge that can gather the data and easily transmit it back into the cloud. So interoperability and the standardization that is such a feature of the compute industry is one of the enablers. So there's a lot of activity going on in that space as well. And Intel and companies like us are working together to try and drive that to horizontalize the solution. The whole idea of standing up something at the edge and to do it really, really quickly so that the devices can connect in a very small number of minutes back into the cloud, get registered, get set up, get managed from that perspective is going to be critical. Anybody can build a solution that monitors one or two things. It's when the challenge is to monitor hundreds, thousands, and hundreds of thousands that you need to have efficient device provisioning, security and management to enable massive scale. And that's what we're looking for here, is what can be done to enable massive scale. Then as the colors go up into the next level, to seamlessly ingest the data from the things to the cloud. And this is to make sure that the data arrives in the cloud and that the devices are managed and controlled from the cloud so that it enables the data centers, including the Sogeti High-Tech and Capgemini data centers, to operate and do the data management there. Then you apply the analytics, which is where the difference comes in from insights and data. And then finally, where the service and ecosystem to monetize all of this. And this is where the customer sees the value. To some extent, everything else until that is the technology elements of the solution. It's at this stage that the customer sees the benefit of it for their customers, their clients, and where they can actually make use of the data to drive their businesses. Until now, we've been managing to get the data to them to enable that to happen, and that's where the money is, that's where the opportunity is. So this is a key slide that we look at to understand the key tenets. So this is the schematic, and a version of this will appear a few times later, and this is the edge, you can see to the left, then the middle layer in the cloud, and then the analytics and solution at the right-hand side. And I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time with this. Architects love this, as you can imagine. Of note are the huge number of communication standards, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, Zigbee, Ethernet, and so on. So any gateway at the edge is going to require some of these, depending on the use case, and the solution that Philippe has created is totally flexible in that sense. That depending on the use case, you could have one or all of these on the gateway. You can see there at the sensor and the actuators at the edge, and then the gateway fitting at different stages there. So we believe that you need a gateway in order to do some local activity, and I'll explain that in a second. That information is then connected into the network infrastructure and then pulled back into the cloud, as I said, where you've got both security side and the data transport and ingestion, and then run the business and logic and rules to understand what the data can be used for from a business point of view. So this is a useful way or a useful schema to talk about any solution. And from an Intel perspective, we believe that you need a gateway. So I'm going to talk about a gateway. So an awful lot of the models that people may have seen don't really consider the edge as such, and they believe that each individual thing, each individual sensor or actuator will be connected directly to the cloud and communicate accordingly. And there are models out there that do that. From an Intel perspective, we believe that a gateway has a number of serious advantages. First of all, they've been around for a while, so they're well understood within industry, and their roles are well understood. And these are more than just routers, and I'll talk about that in a second. And they're applicable in all environments from an IoT perspective. And the reason that we believe that there's an advantage, particularly around Intel, is the security story, which we touched on earlier, around silicon-based security capabilities, based upon the Intel silicon in the gateway, connecting back into a server in the cloud, which runs on Intel silicon as well. And that's something that enables enhanced security from our perspective. That there's near or real-time edge analytics for actionable insight at the edge. And fundamentally, the way I describe this most easily, if a machine is, somebody's hand is trapped in a machine, you will want the machine to turn off right now, right then, from a safety point of view. You don't necessarily want it to go back into the cloud and run through analytics, so you will want to have reasons for action to be carried out at the edge instantly. And that's the most dramatic way of describing it, but there are other versions of that as well. There's also a possibility of doing some local activity with local microservices and vertical packages at the edge as well. And it also enables deployment of new applications and services, so that from your perspective, that whenever you sense one thing, let's say it's temperature, and then the next one might be that you want to sense at a different time humidity. You want to be able to avoid a huge amount of truck roll to do that, and you want to be able to do over the air from the cloud to the gateway and outward deployments from that perspective, and that are field programmable. So these are the benefits. The performance at the edge that we've talked about enables near real-time analytics and local decision making, which is the safety is one example. The advanced security we've talked about. Scalability, we have a number of different solutions that are applicable depending on the type of gateway that you want. As a building or a floor gateway in a smart building scenario might be very, very different from a gateway in a heavy industrial plant, depending on the amount of data that is required, and we have options associated with that. From the manageability perspective, going back to the hundreds and thousands of gateways deployed, trying to manage those from the cloud, this enables remote upgrades and services, avoiding the horror of costly truck roll from the customer's perspective. And then the faster and more flexible deployment, that is a key element there. One of the reasons why that is driving this is that if you think about the sheer number of or amount of data that will be coming in from all these things at the edge, it will be enormous and just continually growing. And although the cost of bandwidth has dropped, it doesn't obey Moore's law, as it says here. So there is a need for an intelligent gateway that can actually filter data, aggregate and analyze before sending it to the cloud. So there's a lot of data that it needs to be captured, but does it all need to go into the cloud? Or can some of it be held just for a little bit of time, then filtered and either discarded or sent up to the cloud at a more convenient time, or something like that from that perspective? The aggregation as well pulls it in, and then some local analytics would be an element there as well. I'm going to spend time on security here when we talk about this one, and it's built-in end-to-end security for data devices and applications. As I say, there's an opportunity here to turn this from essentially a hygiene factor that the client is automatically going to seek to one that is a differentiator and something that you can lead with, that you have considered and spent a lot of time on, where you've got endpoint security, you have gateway security, you have the different network through to the cloud. And what I'm trying to get across here is that the security is both a hardware-related activity from the chip, which enables, like I say, whitelisting type approaches to the different layers of software. The M there relates to McAfee. McAfee is a subsidiary of Intel. It's a subsidiary company of Intel, and it's one of the major security companies. I'm sure you're familiar with them. And we're able to utilize their technology and their expertise along with the classic Intel silicon expertise to enable unique, and I use that word advisedly, it is unique from our security elements for customers and clients. So as you can imagine from Intel, there's an ecosystem of suppliers using all different types of gateways and solutions here from that perspective to enable you to choose from. Depending on the scenario that you're looking at. Some major brand names that you're familiar with, Dell, Eurotech, Nexcom, and then some of the Contron, some of the smaller ones as well that have been used as well. And they will do, as it were, bespoke type solutions that's needed, or just market ones. The advantage, of course, is it drives down the price. Now I'm switching, and the logo at the bottom left will be familiar to you all, no doubt. And what I've done so far is talk generically about Intel and what Intel brings to the party and why gateways and intelligence at the edge, compute at the edge, is important, why security is an advantage. I'm now going to step back and talk a little bit, and I've plagiarized these slides from Philippe, and these are part of decks that he and his colleagues have used with customers and within communicating within the group. So the traditional solutions you see there versus IoT and big data, the idea of proprietary versus open. And the idea of this end-to-end IoT, where you have edge, you have the middleware, the data management in the data center through to the cloud at the other end, for the analytics is important. The point of to be agile, again, where the data is needed. And where the intelligence is needed to carry out the action, and can be dynamic and learn. So the idea of introducing the best of open, agile, and intelligent technology solutions, as opposed to more proprietary, vertical type solutions, is a big element and a big part of a potential story to a client, that they are not going to be stuck or limited by whatever the solution is. So there's 5 steps here that Philippe and team talk about. Acquire the data, aggregate it, analyze it, assign it, and take action. The full end-to-end offering to the customer, to your client. And the idea of the technology requirements, again, end-to-end, scalable, open, secure, and has big data, able to handle very large volumes of data to create the value. And that's why it's clear here that it's not just Intel, by the way, that Sogeti High-Tech are linked with. And later on you'll see other partner logos and brands associated with this. So it's the best of breed, and that which best needs your client's solution. But again, the key messaging here are full end-to-end solution for the customer, that you can do it on a global, massive basis. And that is a differentiator, again, for you in the group, that a lot of small companies and a lot of people are offering bespoke solutions that can fix one thing. For the major brands in the world, dealing with Sogeti High-Tech and Capgemini, it's a global brand that has global reach and can provide a global offering. And that's why the scalability is so important. Open is flexible. Security, can't stress it enough. It is a table stake. It is a fundamental requirement. And then the best of big data, which again, you're able to bring to bear through the big data and insights organization, along with your own data centers or others. It's based on an IoT reference architecture, based on standards, cloud compatible, and it's loosely coupled architecture. So just want to spend a little bit of time with that. This is not a rigid one-size-fits-all. This is not a single product as such. It is a solution that can be priced depending upon the customer's need, or that can be scaled out or be added to. So it has that flexibility. So the idea being that if you solve one of the customer's problems, then the platform is scalable to help address other customer problems and bring that benefits in place. And this is what we're talking about here. This is the platform. This is up and running, and this is working. I want to spend a little bit of time here. The schematic is the same one from earlier with a slight variation around the device security, the device attestation element there, but fundamentally it's the same schematic. And any end-to-end solution could conform to this schematic. The grey boxes are commentary around that which is available in it. The key Sogeti high-tech element brought to bear is the existing e-object platform. It's around the IoT middleware, and this is a proven platform that has been deployed many times before, that is a huge amount of integration already done elsewhere. Fundamentally, you're able to leverage all that history and add to it with the Intel Edge elements and with the data and insight elements at the back end. So that core, proven, deployed platform enables the rest to happen. So it's building out from that and taking it beyond that. An agent from eObjects runs on the gateways, and this is already done. This is up and running. It's integrated with the security around that to enable the data to be hauled back into the eObject platform. And then the Capgemini Insights and Data Group provides the big data and analytics platform, either their own, or if the client has a different solution or a specialist that they want to bring in, those analytics software can be run on the big data and analytics platforms from Capgemini and the data lakes associated with that. And the bottom right grey box touches on that. From the Intel elements associated with this are the sensors and gateways that we talked about earlier, and it integrates security and protocols to address the multiple sectors, and we talked about the communication standards there. And then the security package in the middle at the bottom grey box that we talked about, the McAfee, the silicon-related security elements of that to manage end-to-end between the gateway and the cloud. This slide captures the reality. This is a schema that illustrates existing platform that is up and running within the Sogeti high-tech group and has already been deployed with customers, and we'll look at one use case from their point of view. And that's one of the things that's quite unusual about this particular platform, that a lot of people will talk about what they are going to do. The reality is this is up and running. This is done. It's operational, and it's proven, and it's deployed. Whereas other people will talk about what they are planning to do or they're thinking of doing, you've actually done it. And that's a huge differentiator, and other people are running on it. It also means, and I'll touch on this briefly, that from a proof of concept point of view, that can be done exceptionally quickly. And that, again, is a differentiator that you're in a position to set up and run proof of concepts very, very quickly to prove out. And then, of course, to go seamlessly into pilot from that perspective. And in the use case I looked at, it was the proof of concept took, I think it was from the first connection through to completion of the pilot was 5 to 6 weeks. This particular one is clearly the thing from an Intel, but it talks a little bit to the breadth of the Sogeti high-tech solution. If you look at in the top box, you've got all the big brands from the data center and the cloud perspective. And that's a key thing, because there are some clients who are Amazon, or who are Amazon houses, some are IBM houses, some are Microsoft houses. The point is that this platform will run on any of those. It will run hybrid. It will run in the data center. It will run inside the firewall, whatever the version is. It is that element of flexibility and that element associated with that. E-objects we're talking about in the middle, and the device management, and then the huge range of communication protocols and standards. Earlier on I said that one of the advantages that you have is that e-objects is a proven, and that means that all of this is already in place, already added, and it's a no-brainer to do it from that perspective. And you see the entirety of the different types of communication protocols at the bottom end. All of that is set up. And this is a differentiator because it allows you to use the best of what's available, and you're also able to offer different scenarios depending upon what the customer wants, that the different communication protocols meet their specific needs. So it has that huge flexibility, and it's starting to take advantage of the increased standardization, the increased plug-and-play elements of these things, and you're ahead of the market in that. And that's where the opportunity lies. So massive existing connectivity for the IoT platform from Sogeti High-Tech. The open, highly scalable, rapid device deployment, edge and cloud analytics, and security. And it's the top left side as a service model. So this is off as a service model by Sogeti High-Tech and has the pricing model associated with that. There's a couple of advantages to that. One is it reduces the potential barriers to deployment of the platform in that the cost is amortized over time. It allows the customer to scale up. It allows them to experiment because we're asking them to some extent to deploy IoT, which is a new thing. So the champions of those within an organization, we need to make it easier for them. And this as a service model does that. But the beauty of it is that this is a proven model, as I say, that's up and running and has been conceived to run on an as-a-service basis from that perspective. If you go online, you will find a lot of announcements. I have a colleague who refers to an awful lot of this as the Internet of PowerPoint or the Internet of press releases, where you will find a press release that fixes every problem until you actually try and do it. The differentiation here is that this is up and running with an architecture dossier, with proven UIs, and with deployments in place. So this is a use case that Perry Stoneman uses, and I've anonymized it because I show this within Intel, and it's got lots of warnings on it about that it's customer confidential, i.e. to Sogeti High-Tech, and it's protected by NDA and so on. But the reason I want to show it here is that, as you can imagine, with many clients, they're not that eager for this. There's customer confidentiality reasons. But this one is a particular one because it's a nuclear reactor. And if you think about that, anything that is set up to work in a nuclear reactor must achieve the highest possible standards and must meet the most rigorous tests and most rigorous criteria available to it. This one does, and it was designed and stood up very, very quickly. It's used within the reactor, and the schematic is actually the inside. It looks within the reactor, and it's used to utilization of equipment, and it also is about worker enablement. The issue and the problem we're trying to solve is workers are only allowed to spend a certain length of time within the reactor over a year, so it's limited. So therefore, you want them optimized. Rather than walking around looking for things, you want them to have the tools easily available to them to do the work that they have to do. So it increases the utilization rate. So it's a very particular environment in a very tough working and business case, meeting the highest standards. And the beauty about this is it was stood up and enabled from start to finish very, very quickly. That tells you something about it. So I have two more slides really that I want to touch on, and these are relate to IoT case studies. The one I showed you earlier is the Sogeti High-Tech one, and it's the objective of that was to say that that this is stood up and it is deployed and it is being used by customers who are paying good money for the solution that it brings, and that there is a need, a compelling need, and it's robust. Here's a couple of use cases that Intel has, and the reason we go with these is that it illustrates the breadth that we can share. And we have shared these, and they're available to the Sogeti High-Tech and Capgemini group to use as part of the story if they need it. Clearly you are your own, but you have to get up there and running with it. The first one on the left is a smart manufacturing one, and the next slide explores that a little bit more. And it's an assembly test one. for us, which is a manufacturing use case. And we believe that manufacturing or the industrial IoT will be early and first moving of all the IoT markets. The use case I'll explore it in a second in detail. The middle one is a smart transportation one, where it was all about monitoring driver performance and coaching drivers to drive better. And it had a 6% increase in fuel economy, which for Vnomics, who retail this, had 15 million a year if deployed across 100% of the fleet. The smart building one is basically HVAC in New York, where they saved $1 million in one building in a year by optimizing and monitoring heating and ventilation systems that are on tops of buildings right across Manhattan. Thruden's digital building operating system and Cisco involved in that particular opportunity. And the reason I like these three is there's hard numbers associated with them and real numbers based upon actual use cases, not theoretical numbers, but real numbers from that perspective. This is the Intel use case around preventative maintenance. I'm not going to go through this at any great depth, but it shows that, that from our perspective, Intel is fundamentally a manufacturing company. That we have eaten our own dog food, as they say, that using industrial data center and the dashboard of maintenance, tried three different types of solutions here, using the test handler, the ball attach module, and the defect metrology. And they all address different elements of preventative and predictive maintenance elements there. One from identifying when a part was going to break down and replacing when needed as opposed to on a cycle. Another looking at false positives associated with yield, which is the middle one. And the third was an inline quality control using image processing. And image processing is going to be a huge field right across the board. But the punchline is that it saved us $9 million through cost avoidance in this one factory. And this has been rolled out across the other factories. And there was an ecosystem of companies brought to bear to work on this, the tools companies themselves around the test handlers. There's a small specialized analytics company that was involved here, and of course our own IT department and our own folks. And of course the environment itself is a little bit like the nuclear one. These are clean rooms, and therefore whatever goes in there and the environment requires a lot of robust teachings and testings around that. So next steps, and this is an Intel presentation, and the next step is talk to Philip Raviks in Sogeti High Tech or Mike Maloney in Capgemini. Either of those guys, Philippe based in Toulouse and Mike in North America. There's a whole high-tech Capgemini IoT story here that I believe gives you a differentiation compared to your competitors in the marketplace, because you actually have a platform, it's up and running, and it's deployed. Other people are still at the PowerPoint level, are still designing it. There are client opportunities out there that are worth exploring, and this platform can go to proof of concept very, very quickly. To prove out a business case, and then a pilot to begin the deployment within that. And then the team will support. And our role is to support your IoT team to enable this to happen, rather than try and do it ourselves. So that's really what the objective is.
Thank you, Damien. For those listening, Intel has a large variety of technology and solutions that Sogeti can use to implement in our projects. As an Intel partner, Sogeti has access to training, smart endpoints, and intelligent gateways, and the other devices that Intel makes as part of their IoT platform. For more information, contact myself, Darren.Baker at us.sogeti.com, or Philip Raviks at philip.raviks@sogeti.com to learn more about what Intel provides Sogeti as a partner. I'd like to thank Damien Callahan for his participation today, and we'll be talking with you again soon.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.